you had the opportunity to basically be the Minecraft native to China, like much like instead of relying on the massive Western platform owned by Microsoft out of the Nordics. I forget what country is it, Swedish or Norway, for or Finland for Minecraft Mojang, but um you had it and then you let it go and then it's out. And like and when I say you let it go, like if Riot owned it outright or Tencent owned it outright, they have a backdoor easy entry point into China. Like, great, game works, into China you go, right? Like, and it would probably grow like wildfire there. So like whatever losses they were making trying to make this game, the pipe was right there to just make all the money back almost within the first 6 months, if not less, right? If these type of games are so popular in China, which they are, and you have another option to compete with Minecraft, and you are owned in part by the Chinese ecosystem, let's say, in the CCP, then I think you had a win there that you just kind of let pass you by, right? Clearly because it just did really well at launch. So that's my like framing on this. Just like what, how did this like opportunity cost just like slip them by? And then in my typical fashion, Greg, I had to then go backwards and dissect Riot's entire publishing efforts since 2019 because I guess I'm a crazy person. I had to go backwards and be like, were they ever good at publishing games? Was this like a mistake acquisition from the get go? And then you kind of come to this like kind of realization, and it's somewhat disheartening and also completely logical. But I'll pause. I want you to comment on anything I just said to start things off on this topic.
You like so you're much more bullish on Hytale than I am, and I'm not bullish, right? Like I love the story. I think it's a great story, but when you're a game that's relying on content to be king and there's no content in there, I'm not saying there's no content yet, right? I think someone actually just made a mod that actually lets you or like transfer content over from Minecraft to Hytale, which I mean, if you look at to steal a brain rot, right? That started on Roblox, and someone created a tool to move it over to Fortnite, and that didn't quite work out. I did not see you coming with the China data, and that's where you like put me into a corner. I'm like, damn, he got me there. But it's a fast. I'd love to hear your breakdown on Riot because Riot really does got their shit together, right? They know what they're doing, so it seems, right? And Riot gave up on them. And that's where the story is generating from. That's where that momentum is. And now the question is, do they catch fire from that momentum, which you're seeing in the mind game data that they are catching fire from it. But then you got to
They
keep it going.
they already well, two things can be true. Like, can you have a wildly successful launch? Yes. Does that launch sustain in 9 months? Who knows? Like that's a separate question, right? But they've had a wildly successful launch, which just shows that there was the opportunity was there to be had, right? But like going backwards, yeah. So I think Riot is both good and it's also not so good, but it's not entirely Riot's fault per se. It's more the evolution of a company, and like the constraints you have, via the successes you have. I'll maybe put it kindly like that. So I went backwards, and so I broke right down into what I would call three eras. And like one was the golden era of publishing, as silly as it sounds, but like they did have one. And then there's the kind of I'll call it the Riot Forge era. I don't know how familiar you are with Riot Forge, but I spent a lot of time kind of digging into that ecosystem a bit. And then out comes the post Riot Forge. We're gonna get back to publishing with like lukewarm results so far. But going to the golden era, like forever Riot Games was literally I've been in this space for a while, and we used to always joke when I was at Twitch, like it's not Riot Games, it was Riot Game, and that's like a kind of I believe a joke in the industry. Like they made one game, it was League of Legends, and it was wildly successful, and they were very public about like not wanting to make another game very quickly. Like we want to make League of Legends the best thing it could be. That was kind of the talk track from Brandon and Mark and any other executive that would be quoted from Riot. They were very much like tunnel vision on we are going to make the game that we make, right? That's all we need to do. But clearly, sometime in the 2010s, they started developing games, and out of that comes what I call a heater, right? First game they launched, Teamfight Tactics, in June of 2019. Did very well. Was one of the top, if not the top game of that particular month, and like was I would say the fourth best launch of the kind of Riot publishing era to then. And then fast forward into 2020, so almost a year later, and this is when their real heater starts. They launched Legends of Runeterra, which had a really solid launch, followed by the all-time heater in June of 2020, Valorant, right? Where boom, that just changed the entire ecosystem. Their closed beta had over 1.7 million concurrents on Twitch alone. Like, and so they just won that. Now you could say, oh, that game hit like it did because it was COVID. Sure, but they designed and built the game pre-COVID. So like the game was in like they just put it out right at the onset of COVID when everyone was trapped inside. Yeah, they probably saw some upside, but like blew the doors off. And then ending this heater run, they had Wild Rift, which is the mobile version of League, which I'll be kind and say they would say that they were trying to make the best MOBA possible on a mobile phone, but they were like half a decade late to market. Like Honor Kings obviously beat them, but their own company put out a MOBA on top of Mobile Legends Bang Bang, also beat them to market by half a decade. So they were not the first or second mover. They were the Johnny come lately, but they brought the IP, and I think that game has done fairly fine for itself in post launch. Like it still, trends in our tool as like one of the top games. So my point being with all this is like when you if you're a company, you're not just releasing like EA, you're putting out a game and you move on, or broadly you move on to the next game and the next game, or you take Two Interactive, you put out a game, you move on to the next game, next game. When you're Riot, you put out a game and then you now have success, and now you have to build an entire organization around that game to then staff it forever because you have to keep the engine going. Like you build Valorant, so now you have to do seasons and arcs and characters, you have to get more heroes on and on and on forever. And that's true for every game they put out because they are only putting out live service games. And so I think part of the challenge that they kind of handled, like what happened with kind of get jump ahead to Hightail is like they're trapped by their own success. Like they got bloated as an organization because, and rightfully so, because they had these multi-million billion-dollar franchises that they had basically created that they had to build, sustain, and keep going and going and going. So a lot of decisions were, well, we have to prioritize the thing we have that's making us a lot of money as opposed to prioritizing bets in the future because we don't need bets. We have the thing we have now. We got to make that the best thing possible for our community. So like, I think that's what happened. So I think in part what they tried to do is go in the right for first I'll positive, but like come on man, that's a heater, right? Going through that publishing run through 2019, 2020.
If you want to hear more of our breakdown of High Guard, you can check it out. It's a longer video that's posted here. You can check it out at playerdriven.io. And we have other breakdowns as well. So let us know what you think. Let us know if you played Hytale and what's good about it, what's bad about it. Is it going to be a success?